Please switch on your microphones during your presentation and when you are speaking. Please feel free to leave your questions and comments in the Q&A board or a chat room, and we will address them in the Q&A session. If you face any challenges in listening or speaking, please type in the chat room. My colleague will assist you. Last but not the least, this event is being recorded, and the recording will be available on GGGI online platform after the closing of this event. With this information on behalf of the organizing team, let us now start this session. So I welcome you all to this session now. This session, as you can see in the agenda, is divided into three parts. One is an inaugural session, followed by the presentation and a panel discussion. We will close the session with the closing remarks from GGGI Deputy Director General. So we will now get into the inaugural session with a video message from the President of the Assembly and the Chair of the Council, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. I request the organizing team to play the video message. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished participants and guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome all of you to this year's Global Green Growth Week, organized by the Global Green Growth Institute. Your participation is evidence that we, the global community, demand climate action, and I want to thank you for doing your part to drive and empower green growth. The climate crisis is perhaps the defining crisis of our times. Every year, we can read and hear more and more about the devastating impacts of extreme weather systems, and this year is proving to be one of the worst years yet, with the record floods, the droughts, and the heat waves, all of which lead to displacements from homes, food crises, and wildfires that disrupt and destroy the lives of millions. We are destroying our hope for a better future, and we need to work together to save our planet. I'm pleased to know that so many of you are coming together to exchange ideas, solutions, and best practices on how to advance the implementation of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, the framework which I helped establish during my time as the Secretary General of the United Nations. I'm especially pleased to know that many of you are joining from all corners of the world, including Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and the Pacific, and many of the solutions to be discussed are coming from women and indigenous communities who are most affected by climate change. I encourage you to take full advantage of Global Green Growth Week and engage with one another as green growth champions and practitioners. The climate crisis will require collaboration and collective action from each and every one of us, because climate change knows no borders, and climate change does not discriminate based on race or social class. We can transform our economies and societies and leave a better future, a sustainable and inclusive future, only if we work together. The challenges will be difficult and there are no shortcuts, but if we work together urgently, I think we can do it. As I have said before, there is no plan B because there is no planet B either. I hope you will join me to make the world a better place for future generations. I wish you very fruitful and successful events during Global Green Growth Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for your very thought-provoking remarks. Let me take this opportunity to introduce you to Dr. Kyung Nam Shin, Assistant Director General and Head of Investment and Policy Solution Division of GGGI. He has more than 30 years of experience in green growth, including climate change mitigation and adaptation, among others. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's degree in public finance. He studied law at the Columbia University School of Law and obtained his doctorate degree. He has worked with Ministry of Finance and Economy at Republic of Korea, with Asian Development Bank and others. Dr. Shin, I welcome you for the opening remarks. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you all the distinguished speakers for sharing this initiative undertaken to be and their perspective on various policy, regulatory, technology, finance aspect, green hydrogen and green ammonia ecosystem. I'm very much looking for this kind of beautiful presentation during this session. Welcome also industry expert from the private sector. I really expect them to present technological advancement and development in this sector to enable the generation, storage, and utilization of advanced next generation fuels such as green hydrogen, green ammonia. I really expect them to highlight the immediate actions needed to realize the full potential for these advanced fuels in a net zero energy future. We also expect to have an insightful presentation from my FSC colleague and discussion on innovative financing mechanisms such as first, partial loss guarantees, and blended public and private capital, among others. I understand this kind of innovation can help us establishing best practice models for the sector and then make this kind of project more commercially viable and further catalyze private sector investment. GGGI is undertaking a global program on green hydrogen ammonia with a focus on several countries, including Indonesia, India, Morocco, Nepal, and further, we are trying to tap in Malaysia as well. GGGI would like to highlight various approach in different countries, but we really want to see the country real needs and how can we enable them to move to the next stage of development. However, the multi-country program provides opportunity to learn, know how it works and what works and what does not work, and develop best practice models to achieve the target. So all these kinds of amazing ideas and then solutions have potential to address challenges across the value chain of the sector. It is my view that GGGI-led green hydrogen, green ammonia has been well established, and we have a very strong, crucial role to play in the clean energy transition and achieving net zero. However, industry, chemical, steel, cement, energy, among others, would be the key sectors to decarbonize using green hydrogen and ammonia. I thank all the GGGI staff who have worked towards organizing this session. I'm very much happy to looking for a great sessions and then really learn a lot from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shin, for your very encouraging remarks. We are now moving on to the presentation sessions. We'll start with my presentation. It's basically a scene-setting presentation where I will be presenting the global landscape of green hydrogen and will also introduce Global Green Hydrogen Program. Let me just project my slides. I hope you can see my slides here. Okay, I'm assuming that you can see my slides. Well, So the topic of my presentation is an overview of landscape and green hydrogen landscape and GGGI's global program on green hydrogen and ammonia. This is the outline of my presentation today. We'll start with the global landscape, including classification of hydrogen, projected global demand for hydrogen and green hydrogen, economics of green hydrogen, projected demand for electrolyzer and resulting and associated renewable energy deployment, cost considerations for electrolyzer technology, emerging demand and supply centers. And then I'll take the opportunity to introduce GGGI's green hydrogen program in Indonesia, India, Morocco, and Nepal. I was asked by the organizers to take more than 10 minutes because I have to make two separate presentations here. So I'll take the liberty to extend my presentation beyond 10 minutes. Thank you for your understanding on that. Let's start with the classification of hydrogen. Depending on the feedstock that is used and the process used to minimize the CO2 emissions, hydrogen could be gray, blue, or green. When the feedstock is fossil fuels and results in CO2 emissions, the hydrogen that is produced is classified as gray hydrogen. Hydrogen is classified as blue when the CO2 that is produced in the process, which is similar to the gray hydrogen process, is captured and is stored or utilized. That is classified as blue hydrogen. Whereas in the green hydrogen, the feedstock that is used is water. We use a technology called as electrolysis, and it is an energy intensive technology which uses huge amount of electricity. And if the electricity for that process comes from renewable energy, there is no net CO2 emissions from the process, and the hydrogen produced is classified as green hydrogen. So from there, let's move on to see more about hydrogen. Why do we need hydrogen? Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, very reactive, but always found in a combined state, or so it has to be extracted, as we have seen, either through the steam methane reforming process or coal gasification or the electrolysis. These are complex processes, but results in separating the molecule of hydrogen. And then it is used in various industrial processes. If you see, currently 90 to 93% of the hydrogen consumption happens in refineries and in the fertilizer production. What we expect, by 2030, hydrogen will be used extensively in the steel sector, mobility, as well as in the fuel blending. Irrespective of gray, green, or blue, hydrogen demand is expected to grow exponentially with emerging next age applications. What we produce today is about 80 to 90 million tons per annum of hydrogen. 96% of today's production is classified as a gray hydrogen. That means it is either coming from natural gas or coming from coal. 90% of the hydrogen that is consumed today is in refinery and in the fertilizer sector. We expect to see a 6-fold increase in the hydrogen production by 2050, with next stage applications emerging in sectors like transport, building, steel, cement, and power. We will hear more from our experts as we go forward in our presentation session. The entire gray hydrogen will transit to either green or blue hydrogen. That's what we expect, driven by the increasing emphasis on energy transition and decarbonization. If that happens, then we will cumulatively be abating about 80 gigatons or 80,000 million tons by 2050. And in 2050, we will have 7,000 million tons per annum of GHG abatement happening through this sector. So it has a massive implications and the massive contribution towards net zero. And that is why we are all interested in moving towards green hydrogen. Looking at the landscape of green hydrogen, we expect that the green hydrogen adoption will happen in waves. The first wave is happening today. As we see, there are large-scale green hydrogen deployment plan visible in these segments: refinery, in the fertilizer sector, green methanol, or long-haul trucking. We also see initiatives and the pilots have at the demonstration stage in the steel sector, blending with natural gas. There were huge contributions or the pilots happening in the mobility sector, especially in the shipping and the aviation. And what we expect to see beyond 2030 is focus on the cement sector, using green hydrogen for energy storage, blast furnace injections in the steel industry or for industrial heating, and in the passenger vehicles. But that's a gradual process. This is what we anticipate in terms of 3 different waves for the adoption of green hydrogen. Looking at the economics, again here, you can see that in the gray hydrogen, the cost is mainly the operating cost, 65%, whereas in the case of green hydrogen, the cost is the capex and the electricity that is used. In terms of its prices, the gray hydrogen is available at $1 to $2 per kg, US dollars per kg, depending on where you are producing it. Similarly, blue hydrogen is seen in the range of $2 to $3 per kg, whereas the green hydrogen is seen in the range of $2.5 to $7 per kg. There's a huge difference. Actually, the green hydrogen, if you take the average, it's in most of the geographical location, the cost is about $6 per kg. There's a massive difference between gray and green in terms of its pricing, and that is one of the bottlenecks here. Now, in terms of what we expect to see in the future in terms of deployment and what it means in terms of investments, the global deployment of electrolyzer is expected to reach 400 gigawatts by 2030 and about 4,500 gigawatts by 2050, which means an investment of $300 or $350 billion between now and 2030, and a CAGR of about 100%. And as there will be progress in terms of deployment of green hydrogen, there will be need for renewable energy, and what we expect to see a renewable energy deployment increasing from in 2021 to 800 gigawatts just to cater the demand of green hydrogen going forward. That's a massive investments that are required to shift from gray to green or blue. Again, in terms of technologies, there are 3 main technologies that are available in terms of electrolysis: alkaline polymer electrolyte membrane, or the PEM, or the solid oxide electrolyzer cell, SOEC. Alkaline technology is the most mature and the cheapest and widely used technology, but lower efficiency, whereas the PEM is much better in handling the variable loads and is compatible with the renewable energy, but depends on materials like titanium, platinum, iridium, and makes it vulnerable to the price volatility. SOEC, on the other hand, has a very high efficiency and is also cheap, but operates a very high temperature, and therefore it is not very compatible with the variable loads from renewable energy. What we expect to see, depending on the distribution of different kinds of projects, the alkaline technologies will be dominated in India, China, in the MENA countries, whereas in Europe, it will be mainly the PEM. So in a nutshell, the alkaline electrolyzer will continue to dominate, but PEM is also gaining quite a bit of traction and the market share. This is the picture of what we see in terms of potential exporters and importers, and who are going to be the self-sufficient. We see that EU, USA, Japan, Korea are likely to be the importers, whereas the other regions that are marked in green, you can see they are potential exporters. There is already quite a bit happening in terms of signing of MOUs and establishing some large projects. The MENA region is again seen to be moving towards achieving self-sufficiency, depending on at least their policy frameworks are reflecting that they want to be self-sufficient and they are going to be the next net exporters too. So that was the little landscape of green hydrogen as we see today. Now I'm going to introduce the GGGI's Global Green Hydrogen Program that is running in Indonesia, India, Morocco, and Nepal. So the way we see the challenges, before I get into the specific projects and how we are addressing, what approaches we have taken to address some of these challenges in our programs, we feel that there is a limited understanding on green hydrogen value chain, and there is a very high capital cost associated with the green hydrogen and its derivatives. So we are starting with pilot and looking at scaling them up, creating anchor demands, demand consumers like fertilizer and refineries in our target countries. Cost of electricity is a concern, and availability of water without use diversion is another major concern on green hydrogen. And therefore, we are taking an approach of leveraging renewable energy resources, including the hybrid, for a long-term power purchase agreement, and selecting appropriate project site locations to avoid the diversion of water. There is a trade-off between the location of demand center and at the supply source of electricity. Currently, when it comes to pilots, we are trying to do these pilots close to the demand centers, reducing the cost of transport and storage cost. But when we get into scaling up, we have to really see how we address these challenges. Our objective is to, in absence of any replicable business model that is available, we are trying to create a model by bringing different stakeholders together to create a win-win and a business model that works for a number of key stakeholders. With that, let me introduce you to the first project that we have under the program is the Indonesia Green Hydrogen, Green Ammonia project. We are doing it in North Sumatra, taking the advantage of large geothermal resources that is available in the country and in that region. We have selected a location which is closer to us at a special economic zone, and there are 2 ports that are available for the supply, because if we scale it up, there will be more demand from the demand centers across Southeast Asia for the ammonia that will be produced through a scale-up project. So there are 2 phases of this project. The first phase is a pilot 10 megawatt electrolyzer plant. And then in the phase 2, we will actually go for a deployment of this project after doing the pre-feasibility and a business model, and then scale it up to 1 gigawatt project in phases and produce green ammonia. The idea here is to bring public-private sector and different participants together to create a business model. This project will have an investment mobilization of over $1 billion. We have a lot of interest already on this project from various stakeholders. Also important to note that there is more than 800 megawatt of proven geothermal capacity with concessions in that region, which can be used for generating green hydrogen in North Sumatra. This is our second project in India. We are doing it in partnership with the World Bank. The biggest concern and the biggest bottleneck is the price differential between gray and green. Through this project, we are trying to create an institutional and a financial mechanism to bridge the gap between gray and green hydrogen. Just to say it in simple terms, if the producer wants $7 for the green hydrogen produced, and the buyer wants it at $2.50 because it's purchasing the gray hydrogen at $2.50, this institutional mechanism will try and bridge that gap, and it will not be a viability gap funding. So we'll bring different kinds of instruments together and see that how this institutional mechanism could work that will allow to bridge the gap between gray and green. It's a very optimistic and project, but we have done a framework for institutional mechanism, and we are actually getting into the details of developing the institutional mechanism and a financial instrument that will bridge that gap. This is our project in Morocco. As you know, Morocco imports about 2 million tons of ammonia. It's the largest phosphate reserves in the world. It has huge solar and wind energy potential, and Morocco is set to achieve its target to generate 52% of its energy from renewable energy sources. Taking the advantage of that, the project is all about demonstrating two different technologies, alkaline and the PEM technology. It will be either or, but I think we could also take the advantage of if there is any traction to demonstrate both these projects. So the target is to produce 30 tons per day or 10,000 tons per annum, and the supply of ammonia to a anchor fertilizer industry. The idea here is, again, to mobilize about $350 million worth of an investment by bringing public and private sector between 2024 and 2026. Before that, we will complete the pre-feasibility and develop a business model around this project. This is our project in Nepal. There is a presentation on Nepal, and my colleague is going to present, so I'll not spend my time here to give a background on this project. We will take it as part of the presentation. So I finish my presentation here, and then we will go back to the other presentations. So with that, let me now invite our next presenter. Mr. Ajay Bandyopadhyay. So let me introduce Mr. Bandyopadhyay. Ajay is presently the Asia Pacific lead of climate advisory at International Finance Corporation with the World Bank Group. He has more than 15 years of experience in the industrial decarbonization and in clean energy transition. He is also a member of various leading industry forums in India, such as CII and AmCham, among others. He holds a degree in chemical engineering and an MBA from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. He was previously associated with leading consulting firms such as KPMG and EY. I now invite Ajay to share his presentation on financing instruments and mechanism to promote green hydrogen. Thank you, Ajay. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Nishant. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. So at the very outset, I would like to thank GGGI for inviting me to present in this particular session. It's a topic of great importance today, as Nishant has highlighted in his presentation. And as we see also that it is going to be a dominant lever of decarbonization across the world, especially for both industrialized as well as the growing, developing, industrializing countries across the world. So in my presentation, I would focus on the topic of investment and the financing challenges. So this is a completely new area, a shift in the new ecosystem as we talk about the green hydrogen. And we also see that there are significant differences in terms of the blue, the gray blue, as well as the green hydrogen. So there are nuances, there are differences in terms of the project structure, the risk return perspective of the project. And that's where comes some of the issues related to financing and investment. So we'll quickly touch upon some of the macro parameters and dimensions which are driving the deployment of green hydrogen projects across the world. So certainly we see that the last few years, especially after the last COP, there are unprecedented climate actions across the world. So the drives towards decarbonization from industries, transportation, commercial building, and other sectors. There are the net zero targets taken by the government as well as by the corporate sectors. And at the same time, last few months, the new variability has added to the business environment, which is related to energy security, which is also related to the security in terms of the industrial supply chain. And at the same time, the carbon market is also taking a new dimension. There are national markets. There are also various specific regulations like EU border adjustment tax and etc., which are forcing the industries to take more aggressive actions towards industrial decarbonization. Now, coming to more specific to the topic of hydrogen, what we are seeing that the typical enablers are also improving over the years. For example, there is a sharp and continued decrease in the price of the renewable energy across jurisdictions, especially in a lot of developing markets and so-called the underdeveloped markets also. There is a technological progress in terms of the declining cost of electrolyzers, though this is an area where we need a lot more work in terms of R&D, in terms of various financing instruments to incentivize the electrolyzer production and bringing them on stream. There is a greater integration of renewable energy and storage and reducing the curtailment. And of course, there are increase in the grid services, distribution generations, a lot of policy bottlenecks are being removed across the different countries. And at the same time, globally, there are various coalitions, alliances being formed where, as IFC, World Bank Group, we are also part to some of these coalitions. And we see that more and more countries are coming up with their national plan and strategies to promote hydrogen at a much bigger and in an accelerated fashion. So even from our portfolio of clients, where IFC has been involved as a lender or as an investor, we see there are essentially 2 or 3 types of companies who are taking actions on hydrogen. So one set of companies, the large energy players who are taking hydrogen as a new revenue stream or a business stream. They are working towards either developing either on the hydrogen production or working on the creating hydrogen infrastructure. There are other set of companies who are the manufacturing companies or the large scale process plants in the chemical, cement, steel, or the refineries, who are also in the process of exploring that as more and more green hydrogen come in the market, how they need to upgrade their process, introduce the breakthrough technologies so as to use more hydrogen. So what is IFC's approach in the whole promotion of the green hydrogen, so to say? So what we understand that there are some of the big challenges in the macro environment. Number one is the higher cost than the alternative. So going back to what Nishant had showed in his presentation quite clearly, the significant differences in terms of the cost of gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and green hydrogen. The market structure, which is also not pretty much well developed. The whole green premium of the green chemicals over and above the other alternatives, that is visible, but not so prominently across different continents. Substantial investment is required in storage, transportation, distribution, especially in the infrastructure to move hydrogen from the production to the consumption centers. The lack of projects performing at scale, which is a very important thing, because in most of the cases, we are seeing that the projects which have been taken are typically at a smaller scale, and more ambitions from our sponsors or the clients to move to a more bigger utility scale project serving a bigger demand. Lack of policy support, the standardization, the specific certification schemes, etc., which also have a big role to play in terms of the establishing the prospect of green hydrogen across the world. So IFC's whole focus are around the 5 areas very clearly. The first of all, we understand that this is a stage where the world is, where we need to put a lot of focus in terms of the creating the upstream engagement, what we call, which is essentially an early stage project development support to a lot of companies, private sector organizations across the world. And at the same time, focusing on some of the high-level big bet strategic areas. For example, hydrogen refueling stations, the gigafactory and integrated hydrogen projects, hydrogen-based steel making, renewable-based electrolyzer manufacturing. These are some of the potential large bets where we are focusing on across emerging markets. The second element is the providing cross-sectoral expertise, and this is an advantage which essentially IFC has over a lot of other commercial lenders, that we work across the World Bank Group to leverage our expertise across the different sectors, across different type of assets, and not only bring the investment, but also at the same time helping certain jurisdictions, helping some of the countries in terms of reforming their policies or introducing the strategic plan to support the market development. So the development of the market at this stage is very, very crucial, the development of the ecosystem. So that's our second pillar of focus. Our third pillar of focus is developing the viable business models, where we are engaging with multiple stakeholders and creating the viable business models in the hydrogen production and its utilization for industries, for transport, and few other specialized applications as well. The fourth element is the mobilizing investment, which is again a very crucial issue, and that's where on the one side we are working on the specific financial instruments, for example, like risk guarantee mechanisms, then blended finance, which are going to be a very dominant mode of financing, and at the same time working closely with various stakeholders on developing specific mechanism like green bond, which can support hydrogen projects in particular. So there also we are working with some of the leading agencies across the world to develop some of these instruments, pilot some of the instruments in countries which has high potential for hydrogen production as well as use. And then convene the industrial and the financial players in this space for the co-financing, because certainly IFC in any kind of projects, IFC doesn't want to become the main lender, but we also coordinate and look for opportunities for getting the co-finance arranged from the varied base of the investors and the lenders. So that's the ongoing discussion. And last but not the least, a very key important issues in the whole hydrogen space is the certification of how green your hydrogen is. And there are significant uncertainties given the fact that hydrogen has quite a long, complex value chain, and there are various possibilities for leakage. So given IFC's experience in providing the certification services in many different other areas, this is also another domain where we are working closely with various experts groups and think tanks across the world to create the systems and procedures. So few things very quickly and not spend much of time, but this we know that in terms of when we look at investment, a very critical consideration is the cost competitiveness. And the three factors which are predominantly contributing to the whole cost competitiveness dimension is the cost of electrolyzer, the cost of electricity, electrolyzer efficiency, and few other parameters, for example, the electrolyzer lifespan and etc. And as we see that some of the leading agencies across the world, they have given their projections that this diagram, which is showing very clearly that as the capex goes down, and then the levelized cost of electricity also goes down, which is essentially the cost of input electricity from the renewable, and the capacity factor improves. So that's where essentially the cost of renewable hydrogen, which is the green hydrogen, also comes down. And there are multiple simulations to establish this particular fact. So when we look at some of the projects, not only the developed market, but also in the developing country, there are few issues which are critical in terms of the project development. And these 4 issues I have highlighted, which are the dominant issues. One related to technology, then off-taker market, the power and the water supply, and then the regulations. So in the interest of time, I will focus on few such issues which are of critical importance and where we see the more and more regular occurrence of those issues in many projects. So one, of course, related to technology. And again, going back to the previous presentation, there is no clear winner as such across the world that this is the best technology, but each technology has its pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages. But what is important that even now there are very limited number of licensors for the large scale equipment. So so far for the smaller scale equipments, the licensors are ready to provide those equipment, but very limited number of licensors for large utility scale equipment, which are required for large scale projects. On the demand side, which is the consumption side of hydrogen, various industrial technologies are prohibitively expensive. So example of that, hydrogen-based steel, green ammonia, even in some of the countries, and of course the use of hydrogen in cement and few other sectors which would require far more R&D and external support for the technology to come mainstream. The important issue is also related to offtake, because as we see that unlike natural gas or LNG, there is no merchant market so far for the green hydrogen. And to be considered green hydrogen project to be bankable by most of the lenders, what we'll need is a long-term fixed pay, the credit-worthy contracts with the credit-worthy off-takers, and most of the cases structured on a take or pay basis. So that whole structural construct of the off-taker contract is growing and evolving. I mean, it's not yet established at this point of time. And there are, of course, very limited off-taker pool with a credit-worthy profile, with a well-developed downstream distribution network, which is also contributing to some of the challenges for large-scale projects. And added to that, the green hydrogen mandate for the off-taker industries or the downstream industries, which will create a large-scale demand, is again an evolving parameter. But it's not there in many of the countries, and wherever those are there, the actual implementation is raising a lot of questions, especially in a lot of other emerging markets. Power and water, we know that these are the very critical inputs for green hydrogen, and one of the things which are actually adding to a lot of variability is the consistent, stable supply of abundant renewable energy, which is a key for the green hydrogen production. And a lot of questions are raised, especially in cases where the project developers are sourcing power from grid, which is essentially a mixed power from the multiple different sources. There is also the question of the storage, which is added to the additional investments. So site level renewable energy assessment and availability assessment over a medium to long-term horizon is very key, and that is where the lenders are also pushing the project developers to do that and provide a more credible assessment. Projects which require desalination, because this is again a water intensive projects, and wherever the desalination is required to produce water, the CO2 emissions related to desalination is generally high, unless the desalination is also these are fueled by the low carbon fuel, and that CO2 emission needs to be discounted from the carbon content of the overall supply chain.
Yeah, you
So
have 1 minute to, yeah, you have 1 minute to wrap.
Okay. So so these are some of the various concerns that we see, especially from the project developers. And added to that, last but not the least, the whole policies and regulations related to technical standards, safety standards, and codes are again not well defined. And there are issues related to the stranded assets, especially for the projects which are transiting from the blue or gray to ultimately green hydrogen. So I will possibly go here, which is a more, an important area of my discussion, that given that what are the financing opportunities, financing challenges, and what is World Bank Group's approach to facilitate financing. So we look at the financing challenges. The lenders are raising few questions around 3 or 4 aspects. That how do lenders view the construction risks? Because there are issues related to the modular project vis-a-vis the large integrated projects. Are there specific advantages in terms of separating elements of supply chain into separate financing models? For example, RE, then electrolysis, then the consumption. Even with the strong long-term offtakes, lenders want to understand the viability of the end market on a long-term basis to avoid any future buyer remorse from the offtakers. And then there are bankability concerns around managing regulatory uncertainty, potential stranded assets, and political risks. So few instruments, so to say, the IFC is at the stage where we are also piloting and experimenting with various financial instruments. So few interventions, what we see that probably help to bridge the gap between the green hydrogen and the alternatives is looking at the high cost of electrolyzer. So bringing the concessional finance to the extent of 25%, the balance project debt to be financed by other lenders on commercial terms. Uncertainty of technical performance can be met by the fund, the liquidity reserve account intended to cover the unexpected and untimely cash needs. We understand the novelty of industries is a big issue for many of the lenders. So debt service reserve account for the benefit of commercial lenders are being proposed for many of our projects. Then, of course, for most of the projects, we are bringing a very strong technical assistance components, not just lending, so as to create the market, then build the capacity of the institutional players and the industries. And then the varied risk mitigation instruments, use of concessional and the blended finance instruments, the insurance, bringing donor funds, and last but not the least, which is access to the capital market, because that's where ultimately will reduce or take away a lot of pressure from the project developers to fundamentally rely on the concessional financing. Predominantly, the whole focus at this point of time on the twofold. The first, developing the early stage projects through IFC's upstream engagement, and the second, to bring more blended finance support or concessional finance support using donor fund to look at that how we can bridge the cost between the green hydrogen and various alternative mode of generation. So in the interest of time, Nishant, I would stop here. Maybe there are a few case studies which later on, if there is an interest, I can showcase. But just to wrap it up, that this is where we are today. That we are engaging in the market studies and assessment, the project feasibility studies in quite a few countries. Early stage project development, where IFC is putting some initial investment, and which is a smaller investment to develop the project, with the understanding that once the project goes mainstream, we will have a right to investment in those projects. And there is only one mainstream investments at this point of time on a large scale project, which we are expecting to go up as we go along and develop more early stage projects, take the shape of the mainstream investment in few jurisdictions. So I will stop here and thanks Nishant for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ajay, for this wonderful presentation. We are definitely interested in these case studies. Maybe we'll do another session to understand more on your case studies. Let me now invite, I'm changing the sequence of events. Let me first invite Mr. Suyong, because that's links very well with what Ajay has presented. For his presentation, Suyong is currently a general manager and a group leader of new business development team of Samsung Engineering. He has rich experience of more than 20 years in the area of hydrogen, green ammonia, oil and gas, among others. He holds bachelor degree in polity and diplomacy from the UNC University and an MBA from University of North Carolina. And he has completed his MBA degree. I'm not clear what year it is, but Suyong, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you. Let me upload my presentations. Okay, it's okay. Can you see that? All right. Let me start. Very nice to meet you. The bonjour, the buenos dias, 안녕하십니까? My name is Suyong Oh. I'm the general manager of Samsung Engineering. I joined my company Samsung Engineering at 2002, and I have spent most of my times in my company as the business development managers. And since 2017, I've focused on the green and blue project development. And now I handled many hydrogen and ammonia projects in Korea and in overseas countries. Okay, I'm very delighted to be here online the Global Green Growth Week 2022. And perhaps more important, I'm very glad that you have chosen to take a time to be here today. Okay, today's topic is green hydrogen and ammonia project in the world. And I just make a subtitles, the movement in the private sectors and the implications to the international organizations. Okay, let's move on to the next page. I wanted to show the very two simple diagrams about the green hydrogen and ammonia, and as Mr. Nishant already explained. Simply the hydrogen is made from the renewable energy through the electrolyzers, and nitrogen from the airs. We can make a green ammonia through the Haber-Bosch process. This Haber-Bosch process was invented more than 100 years ago. So I can say it is very proven and matured process to make a green ammonias. And on the right side is very famous, the color, the hydrogen, the gray hydrogen from the fossil fuel, and the blue hydrogen also from the fossil fuel, but the CO2 should be captured, and green hydrogen from the renewable energies. It is very simple one. Let me explain about the driving forces for the green hydrogen and ammonias. The many government and the state declared the net zero or this kind of the CO2 reduction the policies, and the many private sectors and private companies and public companies follow these policies and announced its own the carbon reduction plans. For example, in Korea, the Korean government declares the new NDC target, very long-term target in the COP26 in Glasgow, the United Kingdom, the last years, and the many companies, many the Korean companies follow up and it announced its own the plans for the green hydrogen and ammonia plans accordingly. So the most easiest way to get some the green energies, you know, I coined the green energy started countries. That means some countries cannot, you know, some countries don't have a very abundant the green the renewable energy resources. So for the most easiest way to get the green energies are the high voltage transmissions or the hydrogen pipelines. But many countries, some certain countries cannot do that due to the geopolitical regions. So I can say, you know, the Korea and Japan is the very good examples. And the Korea and Japan is #1 and #2, the LNG importers. And they also becomes a very big hydrogen importers in the futures. And as you know very well, ammonia is one of the very good forms of the hydrogen transportation, hydrogen the carriers. Okay, so yes, so that the green energy starved countries like Korea and Japan should import offtake the hydrogen and ammonia through some hydrogen vessels through the seas. Okay, it is very similar the contents, but let me explain a little bit more about the green hydrogen production, the potential across the regions. It is known that some countries have a very good green hydrogen production, the environment. Let me give some examples. The Chile and Australia, Namibia, Morocco, and sometimes the Malaysia and Indonesia and United States and many Middle East countries like Oman. So this country has a very good environment to produce the green hydrogen. So I wanted to highlight that these countries' names are not the same as a fossil fuel abundant countries. So some are different from the fossil fuel, the production potential of the countries. So I wanted to say some of the developing countries that can change their position from the import the countries to export countries. The Mr. Nishant, they gave some example about the Morocco. The Morocco now they import the 2 million tons of ammonia, and they can change it to the export the countries of the green ammonia, so they can reduce some import dependence, and they become exporting the countries of the ammonia. Okay, so some countries can get a good chance to become energy exporting and energy independent countries in the futures. Okay. And which countries areas are the first movers? I'm the business development managers in the EPC, the engineering and construction company. So I can feel who is the first movers, and I have some mistake to omit the one country is the United States as our exporters. So from importing side, European countries and Korea and Japan is my feelings that they are the first mover for the importing some of the green hydrogen and ammonias, and the most country in the Middle East and the Australia and Chile and South Asia and the United States they are very good movement. Okay, so as you can see in this the name list, the country list, these most countries are developed countries. They have some infrastructures and they have very good background about the regulations, discussions, and financing capabilities, and something like that. And nowadays, the new act, new regulation, they called IRA, inflation, the reduce the act in the United States. That is the hot issues these days in the hydrogen, the economies. Okay, this kind of, as I mentioned to you on the slide, some of the developed countries becomes the first movers, but many developing countries, unfortunately, are lagging behind a little bit because the internal infrastructures, the lacks of the infrastructures and the financial support. So I wanted to add this, I wanted to mention that international agencies or international organizations should do some things to stimulate the hydrogen businesses in these kind of developing countries. Okay. So on the right side, the flow chart, which show the hydrogen and ammonia goes from the country to countries. So yes, as you can see, some from Chile to Europe and from the United States to European countries, and from Oman, from Australia, from the Malaysia to Korea and Japan. In the futures, I expect some from the many countries, like developing countries, from the developing country to developing countries. Yes, I wanted to see that kind of flows in the map. Okay, the green hydrogen, it is my one of the good, I like this question. Green hydrogen is the luxurious alternative energy source. Yes, sometimes yes, but I can say sometimes no. It is a very good alternative, not the luxurious energy sources. So I mean, it's the most current project are the very big size, they're led by the developed countries and big companies. And for example, the 25 gigawatt and 50 to 50 gigawatt, the green hydrogen, the project in Australia, it is huge, the big size, mega size of the project. But yes, for some certain areas, for remote areas or some the isolated areas, this kind of the green hydrogen could be very good options, very smart option, the smart solution for the independent clean energy ecosystem. As you may know, in Tasmania, the island, Australia, they already set the energy independent system, inside of the island, based on the renewable energy sources. Okay, so I can say that some remote areas, some isolated areas in the developing countries, we can make this kind of energy independent ecosystem for the people. Okay, everybody to say about the cost. The cost is the money, and the money is the most important things. As are the construction company, engineering companies, I wanted to give some hourly analysis, the studies. Okay, renewable energy sources cost is the most important. Okay, the 90%, 80%. The cost of the green hydrogen that comes from the renewable energy sources cost. The transportation next. So for example, in Namibia, from the Namibia to Korea, yes, it is very good, the renewable energy sources, but the transportation, the cost is very, very big. So it is not a good options. Okay, so please don't forget that the renewable energy sources cost and transportation cost is the most important things. And CapEx and OpEx is not very important. When I say it's not very important, it is not the big differences between among the project. Okay, the most project, the green ammonia, the hydrogen project has a very similar the CapEx and OpEx. Okay, it is not has a very big differences, the project by project. Yes, surely in certain areas the CapEx that should be doubles or yes, but when we think about the total investment cost, the capex, is not the big portion of the to consider the project. And one more thing is the government and intergovernmentals and international organization support are very crucial. As Mr. Azair of IFC that has, he mentioned, IFC has a very good program to support some case studies. So I can say this kind of studies support and some program are very crucial to make the company and the countries to begin the studies about the green hydrogen project. Okay, and the regulation and subsidies and tax and grants of the government are very, very important, okay, for this green hydrogen project.
So Young, you have 1 minute to wrap up, please. Thank you.
Oh yeah, okay. So Indonesian project, Mr. Nishant already mentioned. Okay, let's skip. And it is the last page of my presentation. Okay, the fundamental changes, this hydrogen change many aspects of the human life. You know, from the hydrogen, we can make the green fuel and the metal refining and all kind of, you know, the final the product from the transportation to industrial areas. It is very big changes. So I wanted to encourage you to support and support on this kind of the green hydrogen ammonia to overcome the climate change. Yes, it is very important, and it is the hydrogen. The value chains will change everything in near futures, I believe. Thank you. And okay. All right, the green hydrogen is not a fix. It is not a quick fix, but a very fundamental one. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suyong, with this wonderful thought. With that, let me invite my colleague Neeraj from the GGGI Nepal office. Neeraj is a finance and economic expert working with GGGI office in Nepal, focusing on program related to climate smart agriculture and green hydrogen. He holds an MBA in finance and MSc in international business economics. His area of interest includes economic and financial outlook of programs and policy recommendation. I invite Neeraj to present his views. Neeraj, you, in the interest of time, if you can take 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes for this presentation now, so that we can get into the Q&A after that. Thank you.
Sure. I'll try to wrap up my presentation as soon as possible. Could somebody please load my presentation?
Yes, Neeraj, I'm trying it. Yeah.
Or I'll do it on my own. Okay. Is it visible?
Okay. Yes, it is. Yep.
So my name is Neeraj Kesi. Good afternoon to you all from Kathmandu, Nepal, and I'm representing GGGI Nepal in the absence of our country representative Blase, and we'll be briefly talking about the program in Nepal, especially green hydrogen and green ammonia. So let me quickly move into my presentation. I've divided my presentation into 2 parts: rationale and challenges, and how things stands. As you might be aware, that GGGI has its program in Nepal as well with perspective to green hydrogen. So when we talk about like project rationale, let me briefly explain about the background. You know, government of Nepal has a high priority for this project, and they view it as a project that could be used as an import substitution rather than a regular commercial venture with the profit motive. As you can see in the slide as well, the supply is half the demand, you know, actually. And when I talk about supply, it's all imported from Bangladesh and India. If you dig into the numbers, it's like the supply is like 300,000 metric tons per year, and the demand is around like 700,000 metric tons per year. You know, so the government of Nepal wants to use this project as a source of chemical fertilizer, basically green hydrogen, using green hydrogen as a feedstock to produce chemical fertilizers like green urea and green ammonia. In the fiscal side as well, government of Nepal has a high cost of subsidy. You know, it provides high subsidy. In fact, as of last year, government of Nepal provided subsidy of around like USD 95 million for the import of the chemical fertilizer. So having this background in place, it's not that hard to imagine why this project is in a high priority for Nepal government. So moving on to challenges, of course, Nepal government wants to do something, but there are some challenges as well. We have highlighted like 3 major challenges: lack of national green hydrogen roadmap and supportive policy environment. So it talks about Nepal doesn't have any policy-related document which talks about the manufacturing of green hydrogen. There is no domestic experience with hydrogen manufacturing or fertilizer production. So in this case as well, there has been past studies, but nothing has come to fruition because of largely political reasons. And finally, hydrogen manufacturing is unviable at the current electricity tariff rate, which is at around USD 8 cents per kilowatt hour. The study says that it has to be around like 3 cents per kilowatt hour for the project to be viable. So now let me quickly move into the current status of the project. So as I mentioned earlier as well, government of Nepal has a huge interest in this project. And as you can see in the right side of my screen, there are three different government entities provided a support letter, written commitment support letter. In the middle, it's a Nepal Electricity Authority who is responsible to provide the electricity as well as setting up the tariff. On the left, you see the commitment letter from Alternative Energy Promotion Center, who is responsible to formulate the policies regarding the renewable energy. And to the extreme right, you can see from our host ministry, Ministry of Forest and Environment. So we also have agreement with the Kathmandu University, one of the pioneer university of Nepal, and they will be helping us to analyze the availability of the feedstock and its appropriate locations. Interestingly, GGGI recently co-organized first ever Nepal Green Hydrogen Summit, wherein Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Finance also showed their strong commitment towards this project. So the project is on a very priority list of the Nepal government. So when I talk about like technical assessment, I'll quickly go through like these 3 points. Kathmandu University is helping us to find out the feedstock and its appropriate location, as I mentioned earlier as well. And GGGI Nepal is helping government authority with the help of with the aid of the corporate lawyer in formulating the regulatory and policy requirements. And now when we talk about green hydrogen, of course, there is a technological part of it as well. So we are also deep diving into the requirement of technology as related to Nepal, including electrolyzer and also when we talk about green urea, we need to mention about the carbon capture technology as well. So we are dealing with everything but considering Nepali market as a reference point. So coming down to business model, at some point of time, we need to talk about the business model. Business model in the right side of the presentation, you can see the table, but we are not saying that every venture is equally important in case of Nepal for the production of green hydrogen. When we take in an abstract, then these are the possible models. However, we did talk to government agencies like Nepal Electricity Authority and Ministry of Agreement, and we can sense that they do not want it to be entirely government, and they do not want to be entirely private as well. So they want the combination of private sector as well and the government, wherein government would be providing hydropower, of course, electricity, and setting up the tariff. They are also ready to negotiate the tariff if the project is feasible, and Ministry of Agriculture would be willing to take or guaranteeing to take all the fertilizer produced. So coming back to financing and bankability, there has been quite a lot of discussion in this presentation as well. So when we did our economics, then we found out that lower electricity tariff is must for this project to go on. So lower electricity tariff in a sense that lower operating expenses needs to be a bit on a lower side. Of course, there is a part of capital expenditure as well, which we presume will go down in the future. But having said that, the government needs to work on its tariff rate and bring down to USD 3 cents per kilowatt hour for this project to be financially bankable. Now, coming to project implementation, Nepal government is doing a pilot phase project with 5 megawatt of electricity. They are trying to understand the ecosystem of green ammonia production And also parallelly, they want to do a full-scale minimum 100 megawatt green hydrogen plant, exploring the prospect of green ammonia and green urea in Nepal. Now, finally, I would like to wrap up my presentation by explaining key stakeholders. We are actually, the government of Nepal is actually the main key stakeholder of this project, including Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture, and also Investment Board of Nepal, which is responsible to bring in the investment from the foreign countries. And finally, we are in a very, very early stage of conversation with the potential private investors, with no commitments as such. So, having said that, in the interest of time, I would like to conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Neeraj. Let me now invite Mr. Rasmus Bistrup. He is a technical promotion manager in MAN Energy Solution, focusing on two-stroke business. He has a technical expertise on energy, especially in the marine and industrial sector. He holds a bachelor degree in marine engineering. Floor is yours, Mr. Rasmus.
Thank you very much. And thank you for allowing MAN to speak at today's event. We are very honored about that. My presentation will be concerning the advancements we see in the application and utilization technologies for green hydrogen, and first and foremost also green ammonia from the perspective of MAN Energy Solutions. So first of all, a little bit about what we do in MAN. Basically, we move big things to zero. We engineer a lot of different systems for decarbonization in sectors that matters the most. And one of those sectors are the maritime industry sector, because it is the backbone of global trade. Around 90% of global freight is in fact transported by sea. The industry is in turn responsible for around 3% of global CO2 emissions, giving the very prominent position we have in MAN Energy Solutions. Around 50% of the global fleet of large merchant marine vessels have an MAN Energy Solutions engine installed. So we actually have a direct impact on around 1.5% of global CO2 emissions. So how do we empower decarbonization in this industry? We actually offer a wide range of different routes. And as you can see, one of the routes are green ammonia. But we also have today a number of other engines that can handle different alternative fuels. And some of those alternative fuels can also be produced from green hydrogen, that is green methanol or synthetic natural gas. And as you can see, this is not something we invented yesterday. In fact, these engines have been developed since more than a decade. And we have now accumulated more than 1,000 engine orders for these engines. Concerning ammonia engines, we expect to deliver the first two-stroke MAN ammonia-fueled engine to a shipyard by the end of 2024. Currently, we are actually facilitating the installment of the equipment here at our research center in Copenhagen, so we can initiate ammonia combustion test at the beginning of next year. And as you can see, the tanks is installed, the ammonia supply system is installed, and what you see in the bottom left corner is in fact the ammonia engine components. So we are already at a very important stage in the development of our ammonia engine. One of the important questions concerning our industry is, what will the future look like when it comes to the different alternative fuels? We expect that there will not be a single clear winner. There will be a number of alternative fuels that will be important in the future. And one of them is, as you can see, green ammonia. We actually expect that in 2050, 27% of all large merchant marine vessels in the entire world will be powered by ammonia, and most of that will be green ammonia. Second to that, around 21% will be methanol. And as you also probably can understand, a lot of this methanol will be green methanol produced from green hydrogen. Slightly smaller percentage will be LNG or methane or even synthetic natural gas. And then there will still be a certain percentage of the fleet that will be powered by single fuel engines, whether that be biofuel or fossil fuels in connection with carbon capture, for instance. So what does that actually mean in terms of the demand from the maritime industry measured in tons? And as you can see, this is a huge demand. This is a huge market potential, because in 2050, these 27% results in more than 300 million tons of green ammonia. And that's a vast amount of ammonia compared to the production you see today. And this in turn also means that there is a need for commitment and investments in the production facilities already today, because this is a gradual uptake of alternative fuels, and hydrogen will be used to produce green ammonia, green methanol, and also synthetic natural gas for the large merchant marine vessels industry. In turn, this means that hydrogen is not expected to be used as a direct fuel in our industry, but we will use hydrogen to produce derivatives such as green ammonia, methanol, and synthetic natural gas. The technologies are in fact ready. When it comes to methanol and natural gas, they're also very, very proven. And in 2024, the first ammonia engine will be delivered to a shipyard. The transition to alternative fuels in the maritime industry has started already. Today, more than 50% of the engine orders we have are in fact dual fuel engines that are capable of handling alternative fuels such as methanol or LNG. And without further ado, this was my very fast presentation in respect of the time limitations we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasmus, for your excellent presentation and very insightful. I'm sure there are a lot of questions on that, but I can see there is only one question in the Q&A for the panelists. If there are more questions, please type it now, or we will just take that question for the discussion. So we are moving into a Q&A session. There is a question: is there a mechanism which governs the hydrogen credits, like Paris Agreement, which governs the carbon credits? Maybe I put this to Ajay. Are you aware of something like that happening in the market today?
I don't think that the whole methodology for making hydrogen eligible as a carbon credit is yet well established, but definitely given the fact that the green hydrogen reduces significant volume of CO2 and it's a main lever for net zero or decarbonization, it is eligible overall, prima facie, in principle, eligible for carbon credit. But the main challenge lies in terms of establishing or validating that this particular asset or particular hydrogen which is being used for some particular application comes from a completely the green source. And that's where a lot of work are going on in terms of the certifying, standardizing hydrogen as a green hydrogen, establishing the greenness of hydrogen, so to say. The moment it is done, I think it would be far more easier to consider it as a pure play candidate for availing carbon credit.
Thank you, Ajay. I think the thought is very interesting. Beyond carbon credits, if there are hydrogen credits, which are traded separately, which goes beyond just carbon credits, I think it's a very interesting thought. Let's look at this as a different mechanism. But there is another question on the Q&A. What are the infrastructure challenges to streamline green hydrogen or ammonia? Maybe Rasmus, you would like to take this question, and maybe So-Young, you want to also come in on that. Thank you.
I can, of course, comment from the outset of the maritime sector. Currently, we see most of the LPG carriers already in operation, and certainly the ones being ordered are also capable of carrying and transporting ammonia. And when it comes to the bunkering supply chains that will allow large merchant marine vessels to be fueled with green ammonia in the future, in a few years from now, there are already many small LPG carriers in operation that would be able to be utilized as a bunkering facility, ship to ship basis. So from an ammonia perspective, this is a limited challenge compared to the hydrogen challenge. I will let someone else comment on the hydrogen challenges.
Thank you. And let me add one more thing. Some challenges. Yeah, okay, so the whole portfolio of the hydrogen and ammonia, there are some certain unmatured technologies like yes, the liquid hydrogen, the carriers. That is number one. Number two is the ammonia to ammonia synthesis is very easy, but ammonia to the hydrogen, the cracking technology is not the very commercialized yet. And one more thing is the hydrogen, the power generation, the turbines. That is the major the challenges in the infrastructures. Thank you.
Thank you, Young. I can see Ajay, you want to come in? Just quick intervention if you have any.
No, nothing in particular, Nishant.
All right. All right. So thank you all for your presentations. As we can see that the policy frameworks are emerging. There are financing instruments that are also emerging, especially within institutions like IFC and other multilaterals. We can also, so there is a huge demand for green hydrogen and its derivatives. We can also see that there is new technologies that are emerging to support that demand. So there is a landscape that points towards a hope for decarbonizing hard to abate industries. And we all need to work together to make sure that we achieve the decarbonization of these hard to abate industries in the future. I thank you all for your very insightful presentation. We are closing this session on the Q&A session and the presentation session. Let me now invite the Deputy Director General, Ms. Helena McLeod, for her closing remarks. Helena is currently working as Deputy Director General in GGGI. She has a very rich experience of more than 2.5 decades in designing and leading innovative development program. She holds a master's degree in environmental and natural resource economics from University College London and a bachelor's degree in economics from London School of Economics. She has previously associated with DFID, AusAid, UKAid, among others. I welcome you, Helena. The floor is yours for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishant, and thank you to all of these presenters, distinguished guests. I've really appreciated your inputs. And I get excited by so much of the work in GGGI, but I must admit, when it comes to green hydrogen and the session's content today, I am really excited because I do think it's a game changer. I want to thank my colleague, Dr. Kyung-Nam Shin, for championing this in the organization. It's a new area for us, and it's an area that has snowballed. So every single bilateral we have, and I've had a number today, we get requests on green hydrogen and ammonia for very good reasons. So lovely that we've brought the experts together today. So what have we heard today? Well, our industry experts from Samsung Engineering and Manergy Solutions have presented the technological advancement and developments in the sector to enable the generation, storage and utilization of advanced next generation fuels such as green hydrogen and green ammonia. They have also highlighted the immediate actions needed to realize the full potential for these advanced fuels in a net zero energy future. And then we've also had a very insightful presentation from IFC and discussions on innovative financing mechanisms such as first and partial loss guarantees and blended public and private capital, among others. So these are all areas of such innovation and, again, working in this way to really catalyze the green transition. So we are undertaking a global program on green hydrogen and ammonia with a focus on Indonesia, India, Nepal, Morocco and Malaysia. But as I say, we are getting so many requests from different countries. This is likely to expand. But what it does mean is having these variety of different countries, we can really learn from the different examples and then take that learning to other countries as we go forward. So I really do think that you presented amazing ideas, and it excites me that we're really greening whole sectors and industries. And I just look forward to seeing everybody put this into action and some of our heaviest carbon intensive industries being greened as we go forward over the next decade. Thank you to all of the speakers, but also thank you to the GGGI experts that have been involved, Nishant and the team for leading and developing this session. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena, for your remarks. All the participants, you may check out the upcoming event of during this Green Growth Week on our website, www.gggi.org.